Welcome to the Commerce Tomorrow podcast, your one stop to learn about the technology that's powering the future of commerce. Here are your hosts, Dirk and Kelly.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Commerce Tomorrow podcast. I'm here today with my co-host Kelly Götsch, and today our special guest is Ronan Tighe, Chief Product Officer at Moonpig. Hi, Ronan. How are you doing?
Hi. I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for taking the time to be with us on the show today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What have you done before?
Yeah, sure. So I did a computer science undergrad in Ireland, which is where I'm originally from. Post my undergrad, I decided that I didn't want to spend my days coding in front of a computer. I was more interested in the value that consumers and businesses got from software. So I went into a master's in interactive media, which was a really interesting mix of creative arts, psychology, and technology. And from there, I moved to London, where my first graduate job was at a UX and web analytics agency called Foviance. I spent 4 years there, largely doing research, design, analytics, before moving on to a kind of consultant sales role, at which point I decided to go kind of client side. I think the highlight of my time at Foviance was my first experience of really e-commerce and design, and that was a 4-month project in Romania, working on ATG, the first Vodafone implementation of ATG. So that's kind of where I really got a passion for e-commerce. After Foviance, I moved to Betfair, which is the world's largest betting exchange. So that allows people to bet against each other.
Was that in Malta or was it in the UK? I remember a time in 2000, I think, I got a job offer. I was just in university, I think in my second year, and I got a job offer as a programmer for, I don't know, I don't remember the name, but it was one of these betting companies at that time that came up. But all the developer jobs had been somewhere in Malta or any kind of these islands with a different kind of legal system. But how was it for you?
So Betfair's head office at the time was in London, and a large base of developers and product and marketing were there. We also had regional offices on those islands. So Malta was a main hub for casino games, along with Gibraltar. So we definitely follow that trend in order to be tax efficient, which was what happened at the time. My time at Betfair, I joined as a designer, and then I moved quickly into product. I pretty much only worked on the sports kind of products there. So first the exchange, and then the sportsbook, which is enabling people to bet against the company, so the bookmaker. Pretty much working with mobile apps in particular for the first 3 years. And then my last year there, I headed up the product team for the exchange, which was the main primary product for Betfair. Following Betfair, I moved back into the world of e-commerce, to Net-a-Porter, and I was there during the merger with Yoox, so it's now called the Yoox Net-a-Porter Group. For those who don't know, Yoox Net-a-Porter is the world's largest online luxury retailer. So there's 4 consumer brands that go across men's and women's fashion, both kind of full price and then off price, so kind of outlet and proposition, and they also have a B2B arm which do the e-commerce kind of fulfillment and front end for 40 monobrands like Valentino and Armani. I headed up the product for 3 of the key brands within the group during my time there, and after that I moved to Moonpig. Also during my time at Net-a-Porter, I did an executive MBA at London School of Business to kind of really round out my academic side and to include, a foundation in business as well.
So as a CPO at Moonpig, what does your daily job entail? It's not a terribly well-defined role. And speaking as a fellow CPO,
So I see my role as like being part of a really tightly aligned leadership team, where we are collectively responsible to deliver value for customers so that we profitably grow the business over time. So actually, the realization I had of becoming CPO is I wasn't part of the product team any longer. I was part of a company's leadership team, and that takes on a very different role. So while I do spend a lot of time with the product managers and designers that are part of my function, a lot of my time is spent really influencing and leading across all of the functions within the company to ensure we meet our strategic initiatives, whether that's within the product and tech side, but also within our marketing, operations, and kind of commercial functions. Within, I guess, the product context, a lot of it is just helping those teams deliver value at pace in order to better support our customer needs so that we are keeping ahead of the competition and any potential new entrants to the market, so we're not disrupted.
And I love that role. It makes perfect sense, but you don't really see CPO titles outside of software vendors. So was it Moonpig's initial founding team that decided they need a CPO? Like, how did somebody at a non-software vendor decide to create that title? Is those roles are typically spread across other executive management functions.
So Moonpig's 20 years old, and so the founding team is long gone. We were bought out by a private equity company a number of years ago, and they brought in leadership at a group level from the likes of eBay and Microsoft. So that team brought with them an understanding of how key product is, especially when you're trying to build a culture of creating cross-functional autonomous teams that are given long-term goals. You really need a strong product function that can support the delivery of that. So it's I'm the first person with that title at Moonpig, but it's certainly a transition I've seen across a lot of companies in London and further afield as well.
For those that haven't heard about Moonpig yet and that are probably living outside of Europe, can you tell us a little bit more about Moonpig?
Yeah, so Moonpig is the UK's leading online personalised greeting, flowers and card retailer. So we started off as a card retailer. So we enable people back in 2000 to customize greeting cards. So that's birthday cards, Christmas cards, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Valentine's Day. Any occasion, they can come onto our site or our app, and they can add a photo or multiple photos to the card and write messages inside, and then send directly to the recipient or send it back to themselves to give in person. So we've got a range of 10,000 cards. Half of them have the ability to add photos, and the rest you can kind of customize the text. And this gives people really the freedom to make a card more meaningful for the occasion they want to give. And we create 17 million unique cards a year. We're not just about cards, so we also have flowers and gifts business. Some of them gifts are personalized, like personalized mugs or t-shirts or wine bottles. And that's about 40% of our revenue. And flowers, we're one of the top UK retailers during Mother's Day and Valentine's Day when it comes to flowers. We're part of the Photobox group since 2011. So our sister companies are Photobox, Greets, Hoffman and Posters XL, and they operate in various countries across Europe. So collectively, the group is the largest personal and personalized product company within Europe.
Awesome. Very interesting. I wish that concept had really taken off in the US, especially. We don't really have that concept. Everybody goes and buys ridiculously overpriced greeting cards from their local drugstore for $8, and they're not personalized. So it's frustrating.
Well, we do have a US and Australian website. So if any of your listeners are in those regions, they can come, and we ship cards internationally around the world. So you can just go to our website and get a card for anyone, anywhere.
Very cool. What does your current tech stack look like?
Yeah, so as I said, we're a 20-year-old company, and so you can imagine that it has largely been built in-house organically over time. We've always had our own in-house engineering teams. So within our current tech stack, there's going to be a lot of old bits within a monolith, our front end is a lot of Angular right now. There's newer bits that we've built in the last couple of years that adhere to modern architecture best practices. Our back end's largely .NET. We use AWS across the board, and we're now currently building our front end in React. So it's definitely an evolution over time, and it's something we're really focusing on now, and we've got a kind of clear view of where we want to be in a couple of years.
So speaking about the initiatives that you are now looking at and the changes that will happen, can you speak a little bit about that? So what are the main tech initiatives, main strategic architectural changes and so on that you're planning?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we're currently rebuilding our front end in React. We're moving to a headless content management system. We're really trying to essentially decouple the front end business logic with the back end, and we've got a number of kind of key, architectural principles that we're working towards. And so we have. We need to operate on massive scale, especially around our peaks. So that's Mother's Day. We can easily take in over 300 orders a minute at our peak time, and that's we're fully integrated. So that's from a customer placing an order on the site to the car being printed in one of our factories. It takes about 10 seconds, and that's all through our own stack. So we really need to build a highly scalable, reliable system that really meets those business needs. We are really focused on making data a first-class citizen, so using GraphQL to expose that.
Let me ask one question into that. Yeah. Talking about peak times, and you don't need to tell any special business secrets, but is there seasonality? So I mean, big seasonality. So where you have high peak times that are. So I know, of course, you have Easter and Christmas and Mother's Day, Father's Day, and so on. Of course, overall, this is business peak times. But what is causing, or what effect is causing, for example, thousands of orders an hour coming in?
So that would be Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, and as Chris. So we've got 4 peaks in the year. So Christmas is a bit of a lower ramp up period. So we find the way people shop at Christmas happens over a couple of weeks. So if you're going to send Christmas cards to all your family and friends, you might send 20, 30 cards. You tend to do that maybe towards the end of November. As you get closer to Christmas, people usually buy individual cards and gifts. Mm-hmm. So that's a 2-3 week peak. Valentine's Day is a massive peak for us, especially for flowers. So we will sell 100,000 bouquet of roses in 3 or 4 days during Valentine's Day. So you can imagine the operational effort that takes. We have to build pop-up warehouses in order to satisfy the demand of customers, and people are shopping later and later due to expectations of e-commerce retailers like Amazon are setting. So it's those peaks that really drive the biggest number of orders. The rest of the year tends to be a lot flatter, but birthdays is the predominant kind of use case outside of the peaks.
And how do you manage this elasticity on the infrastructure side? So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, and like I guess the forward plan is we're leveraging more cloud infrastructure, so we're moving to kind of platform as a service and serverless infrastructure where all of the infrastructure is in code, and we can spin up new services when needed. So we're not paying for massive data centers when we don't need them during peaks. So we now have all of our kind of legacy architecture on AWS, but we're kind of moving to this new architecture in order to make it faster, more scalable, and more cost efficient.
Okay. No, great. So sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted to dive a little bit deeper in the peak part of your business. So just go on. You've been talking about your tech initiatives and architectural changes.
Yeah. So there's clearly a kind of big platform initiative right now. But while we're doing that, we're also continuing to deliver value for customers, and in particular, we're focusing on how to bring that the experience of buying a card and customizing it as quick as possible. And in order to do that, we're focusing a lot on our recommendation engines and the way that we kind of rank our cards and gifts on site so that it becomes more relevant. And we're also working a lot on our reminders functionality, which really helps kind of people remember occasions, and also it drives frequency and retention for us.
Very good. So how does your recommendations engine look? Can you tell us a little bit more about the tech stack that powers that and some of the processes you're using to build it?
I'll go up a level and just give a bit of context, because I think it's quite an interesting challenge that we have in terms of how we recommend product to customers, and that kind of drives our decisions from a technology perspective. So we do a lot of qualitative and quantitative research on our customers, and over time we've identified 24 conscious and unconscious variables that impact how a person celebrates an occasion for someone in their life. So examples of these variables are like the demographic profile of the giver, so their age, their gender, but their relationship with the receiver is also critical. So if you're giving to your dad, it'll be very different than if you're giving to your wife. And their willingness to spend and the time and the money on the gift is also key, along with their confidence of choosing a gift. There's also variables for who they're giving to as well, so their relationship and their perception and their interest in kind of receiving gifts. So when we had that information, we also were able to map out customers' kind of mental models. So once it gets triggered that they have to buy a card or gift for someone, all of these variables determine how they approach achieving that goal, as we use the jobs to be done framework. So we think about it in terms of the job, but essentially it's the customer goal, and they break it down into tasks. And we recognize that when they thought of buying a card first rather than a gift, they thought of Moonpig, especially if they thought of a personalized card or they thought of an online card, because we've got 90% brand awareness in the UK, and we've got well over 50% of the online market. So the way customers come to us is they generally come with a card purchase in mind. And what we wanted to do is, using the card, help the customer by recommending relevant gifts or flowers to them. So what we're doing with our recommendations engine is we're looking at the variables that we can glean from a customer throughout the journey and their purchase history, if we have it, and then influencing our recommendations engine to present better, more relevant gifts to them. So we're building up the number of inputs that we're using in order to kind of drive the attach of gifts on our site. From a technical perspective, we started really lean and really basic. So really this project started about a year ago, and at the time it was quite a fixed set of gifts that we would show customers. And we just started by just looking at previous purchases and putting a file in a server that just linked the cards that people had bought with the purchases that they had on the site. Over time, we've built out a MongoDB database that directly allows our data scientists to create new algorithms, and then we use it optimizely as an A/B testing solution. So we're constantly testing a new algorithm versus the old algorithm. We're now more involved, and we've got 6 different variables influencing the algorithm, and we're starting to use some machine learning in order to optimize it even further.
You know what's impressive about that? What you're doing is, maybe it's just how you talked about it, but you only use the word machine learning once, and I find that pretty impressive in 2019. So.
And we're actually, I think what we found is when you're at a starting point, you need good data, and we had no data. So we used a lot of common sense to begin with and did things really simple and really basic. And now we're at a point where we're experimenting a little bit more, which at the time was probably frustrating for the data scientists who have a lot more knowledge. But we took a sensible and very lean approach to it, and we were able to deliver these tests very incrementally and continually to learn as we went.
Yeah, I like that. So you're also working on a reminders service, right? So I presume that's to remind folks to order cards, and that's probably quite closely related to the recommendation service. What is the reminders functionality?
Yeah, so this came about again by looking at our customers, but the kind of broader context was we understood that we had more competitors who were either entering the market or essentially just copying our proposition, and when you're in that space where your kind of your core journey gets kind of commoditized and more and more people are appearing in kind of Google and in both paid and organic, you need to think about how you capture a consideration earlier in the journey. So we use the Jobs to be Done framework to really map out how people were kind of thought about buying a card and how they were triggered. And we identified two points. So the first point was the initial kind of trigger of, oh, it's someone's birthday coming up. And that sometimes can be, it's the start of the month. So that you'll think, well, what birthdays do I have in June? More organized people will think, we'll have a diary and they'll write it down. And then people who are very disorganized will see it on Facebook that day and sheepishly send a message wishing their best friend happy birthday. So what we wanted to do is support customers by allowing them to set reminders. And we understood that they often would see the first reminder and then forget about it. So we prompt them again. But essentially, when you go through the purchase journey to once, we make it very easy for you to set a reminder at that point. And then we allow, in a year's time, we will prompt the customer to come back to us and shop. They can also add reminders, and we've made it very easy for them. So you can come in and add all of the birthdays for the next year, and we will prompt you. And we've also worked very hard on making that journey very seamless. So when you tell us who you are buying for, we will drop you straight in a relevant gallery. So it's very quick to select a card and then check out with a gift. We now send, customers set 7 million reminders a year with us. So we've got a considerable number of, the data that we have of that is incredibly rich.
It sounds as if you're building a lot of stuff right now. Let's talk a little bit about the core commerce platform that's underlying of all of that. I know over the last almost 20 years, it evolved a lot, but what's your next generation commerce platform looking like that you're currently working on?
Yeah, so about a year ago, we looked at our stack and we kind of took a step back and looked at, I guess, where we were spending our engineering time. And we realized that we were focusing and building on too many things that are now commoditized e-commerce capabilities, and where we really should have been and need to focus on parts of the customer experience that are unique to our market and that will be able to differentiate us from our current competitors and any potential new entrants. So around this time last year, we kicked off a 3-month vendor selection process, and we chose Commerce Tools.
Full disclosure so here now that we are also having a customer relationship. The vendor selection process for us was really good. We just built stuff. We didn't spend months working on really long, detailed functional specs and listening to lots of sales presentations. We just got a team and we gave them a few weeks to create proof of concepts of the number of vendors that we shortlisted. So when it came to making the decision, we had a really clear understanding of what it would take. And what we liked about Commerce Tools was it would allow us to kind of sequentially move parts of our existing stack over time, so we can continue to deliver to customers without taking
a significant portion of our team out and building something behind a closed wall for months on end. So we're now at a point where we're releasing new parts of our stack to customers in different markets and rolling it out sequentially over the next year.
Sounds good. What other components are involved when it comes to the new stack that you're currently working on?
Yeah, so I mentioned we're moving to headless CMS. So we're using Contentful for that. We're using kind of GraphQL as kind of intermediate layer, and we're fully on kind of AWS. So we're kind of using kind of Lambdas and CloudFront within that. And that's kind of the core. We're currently looking at different server-side A/B testing kind of frameworks as well. So yeah, there's a lot in play, and we're also moving to Cognito for our authentication service.
Very interesting. So you mentioned a lot of your new front end stack is React based. Why did you go with React, and do you use the whole Apollo tool set with GraphQL, or how does that look?
Yeah, so I think we chose React because we really wanted to create a kind of fast and slick experience for our customers, and right now we find that the way our front end is, has organically been developed over time. It can be quite difficult to iterate quickly. So we built a component library, design system component library, and we're creating the stack in order to allow our kind of cross-functional squads to quickly deliver and iterate new functions, new features, so we can experiment quickly.
Yeah, I like that approach. And what's interesting is, maybe this is just a note for our listeners, but Ronan has never once alluded to a monolith, right? You guys are all microservice by default, all cloud native by default. And I just think it's remarkable. In the past couple of years, those discussions have completely changed to where this is just the new normal, right?
Yeah. So yeah, we have a monolith that we're moving away from, right? Like I think, and I think when you understand the pain of that monolith, you really want to move towards a world where you've got microservices that it really would enable teams to independently deliver without creating lots of inter-team dependencies. So when it comes to releasing something, you have to coordinate massively, and that slows you down. We're really trying to build a platform where we can have kind of smaller, cross-functional full stack teams that can just ship things quickly.
Yeah, it just makes so much sense. You could have a recommendations team that just works on recommendations, and reminders that just works on reminders. I mean, it's crazy to hear anybody even contemplating sticking to that old architecture in today's day. So on the topic of cloud, you selected AWS. Why AWS specifically? And also, what do you use within AWS? Are you really part of that whole ecosystem? Do you use eventing? Do you use Lambda?
So really, we chose AWS because they're the industry leader. We're finding, from a cost perspective, they were far more competitive. There's also, when we look at the market for hiring engineers, it's a skill set more engineers have. So that really ramps up, or helps ramp up engineers who join us. They have a broader service offering. We at a group level, they offer us incredible support. So I mentioned our sister brand, Photobox. They migrated all of the photos over to AWS, and it was the largest migration of data AWS ever did. And we received really good support from them. In terms of what we're using, we're using Lambdas. I think we're trying to use the full service offering they provide. Sorry, I don't know the detail too much behind everything that we're using, but we're using them to the maximum of our abilities.
Sounds good. one complete other question, but also related to the tech architecture. Beside all the e-commerce related functionality, the recommendations, the reminder service, and much more, you also have unstructured content everywhere across your site and apps, like landing pages and other things. So what kind of architecture or platform or product are you considering to manage that in a kind of CMS or DXP role?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we've chosen Contentful for or
so you
CMS.
go the full headless way here.
You make yes, yeah, and that is so that we can really start to use content and personalize that type of content, so that marketing kind of content to our customers based on their behavior, and it'll also enable us to get content across our platforms, because we have our website and our native apps. I think the rest of the unstructured content. So we've got a lot of content that, in terms of what people write on cards, for example, that we store, that we actually could utilize in ways to try and understand people's behavior, and try to suggest messages on cards, for example, and we don't use that yet. That's something we would desire to do, but it hasn't reached the top of the priority pile just yet.
Very interesting. And how do you roadmap as an organization, right? So clearly you probably have 10 years worth of work ahead of you, right? You have a fixed team size. How, as CPO, do you lead that process?
Yeah, I've always struggled to answer this question, but
me too, by the way.
Thanks to my team, I now have a good answer. So a few weeks ago, we held a company strategy day, and I asked them to come up with an entertaining way of communicating our roadmap to stakeholders and getting feedback from them. So what they did was print out all of the features and all the ideas we had onto our cards. And some of the cards were our giant size cards, which is A3, and some were A4 and some were smaller, and the size of the card reflected the size of the reward that we thought that feature would launch. And then they placed that on we've got a staircase, and they placed them at various steps on the stairs to illustrate the cards further away were harder to deliver. And then they got Nerf guns and got our stakeholders to shoot the cards that they wanted us to implement. And stakeholders were only allowed 10 bullets each. So they had to prioritize what they really wanted. And they also had to have a good aim. So that's now what I'm going to tell people when they ask me how do we roadmap.
I love that.
Get out Nerf guns and let people shoot down cards.
That's great. Sounds like you're based in Mountain View, not in London. That's great.
Yes, yeah, we're a real feel of a tech company. Seriously, the way we do it is we define it at a kind of management level from it's top down, bottom up, and it kind of goes back and forth. But we make a clear business strategy, and we kind of outline the key things and the key metrics. And we're very, I think I've mentioned the customer quite a few times on this, but we really think about what customer metrics we need to change and what and how we need to satisfy the needs of those customers. So we kind of give an outline at a leadership level, and then every team within the company. So the way the company is kind of organized is that the product team, along with engineering, they're within cross-functional squads. And then you've got our kind of traditional marketing, commercial, and operations functions, and each team defines clear OKRs based around that strategy. We set them every 6 months. We tried 3 months, and it was too much pain to keep on redoing them. But we set them every 6 months, and everyone in the company can see everyone's OKRs. And about 8 times a year, there's kind of an internal 2 days where every team comes and presents their progress against achieving their OKRs. And then the teams are kind of almost left to define how they want to roadmap. they always have to kind of give us, give a view on what they're doing right now and what they expect to do next. But it's a fluid operation, and they're just continuously learning and continuous updating the roadmap based on that. So on a day-to-day level, that's how we prioritize and determine our roadmaps.
I love the approach. It sounds very much like something a software vendor would do, not a greeting card retailer. So I applaud you. That's great. With that, we are out of time. So just wanted to thank you on behalf of Dirk and I for joining us today. Very much appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Ronan.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Dirk.